Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this workshop meeting of the Lower Paxton Township Board of Supervisors. We will call the meeting to order, and we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, and nobody specified, so Mr. Chrisman, would you do that for us?
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Before we go to public comment, I would like to announce that prior to this meeting and after the meeting, the board has met to receive information from the township manager and to discuss personnel issues. With that, public comment is for any item not on the agenda. So at this time, would anybody like to address the board on an item not on the agenda? If you would please come to the podium and give us your name and address.
Turn it on, right at the bottom.
Hello,
Yeah.
my name is Susan George, and I live at 2330 Forest Lane, Harrisburg, 17112. I'm here tonight to tell you of my interest in having an AED registry established in Dauphin County. If you don't know, an AED is an automated external defibrillator. It is used in cardiac arrest. In addition to hands-on CPR, if your heart is out of rhythm, it's a machine that can be taken off of a wall and help to convert your heartbeat. I became very interested in AEDs about 9 months ago. A friend of mine was out jogging in Lower Paxton Township. He dropped over with a cardiac event. Even though bystanders came to his aid, called 911, started CPR, Lower Paxton Township Police Department arrived with a defibrillator, administered that. EMS was there. Everyone was doing heroics trying to save his life. He was transported to a local hospital where he remained on life support for 3 days. His family had to make a difficult decision to remove the life support. He did not survive that catastrophic cardiac event. So I became really interested in AEDs at that point in time. I actually went to the location where he had his cardiac event, which was in Lower Paxton Township near Value City. He was jogging near that strip mall. And I went into all the stores at that strip mall to see if they had an AED. I went into both pharmacies, the Giant, the furniture store, Costco, Home Depot, Target. The only store that had a defibrillator on Valentine's Day in 2019 was Costco. Since then, the Giant has put in a defibrillator in their store. I'm willing to bet if I went back to those 15 stores, none of them would know where those two defibrillators were located. After that, I wanted to know if there was a registry of defibrillators in Lower Paxton Township. I wrote to the township and found out we did not have a registry of AEDs. The township suggested I come to the public safety meeting and bring my concern to them. I attended that meeting in April. At that meeting, I was instructed to contact Dauphin County 911, since they would be the entity who would decide if Dauphin County needed an AED registry. I reached out to Dauphin County 911 and shared with them information I had collected since January on communities in the United States that had established AED registries. I shared information with them about Orlando, Florida, and their registry, the District of Columbia and their mandatory registry, and information about Berks County, Pennsylvania, that launched their AED registry in June of this year. When I spoke to Berks County, I asked them who administered their registry, and they told me it was an external contractor who has an already established registry that they merged with their CAD system. I was interested in pricing what it might cost a community to do something like this, and I was told by the largest vendor of AED registries that the annual cost to a community is 3 cents per person per year. So for Dauphin County, if they chose to implement something like this, 272,000 people in Dauphin County times 3 cents per person, the cost would be $8,000 a year. If that cost would be prorated to Lower Paxton Township based on our population of 48,000 people times 3 cents per person, the cost would be $1,400 a year. You may know that in Lower Paxton Township, we have about 126 heart disease-related deaths every year in our township. We know that 85% of those cardiac arrests don't happen in a hospital or doctor's office. They happen in our community, workplace, place of worship, and on the streets of Lower Paxton Township. You may also want to know this, that Senate Bill 115 was passed earlier this year by the Pennsylvania legislature. That is going to require that all children who graduate from schools in Pennsylvania are trained in hands-only CPR and how to use an AED. But I ask you, what good is that training if we don't know where the AEDs are? Last week I contacted Dauphin County 911 to ask for an update on where they were. They indicated to me that they were vetting 2 AED registry systems, but there were no promises. They were simply starting their process. They have a long list of priorities, and this was one of the things they were looking into. So I would say to you, I think there is a need for an AED registry. We're building a lot of more 55-plus communities. We know the risk for heart disease goes up as you age. And I would ask you, if you had the opportunity to support the establishment of an AED registry in Dauphin County, that you would do so.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any questions or comments from board members?
Just a comment, Susan, just for information, there's 2 of them at Hoffman Ford right across the street from where you were.
Brad, we'll ask the public safety director to maybe keep us informed as to what sort of progress the county makes on that.
Will do.
Are there any other members of the public who would like to address the board on an item not on the agenda this evening? Okay, seeing none, then we will move to presentation of proposed Dauphin County local share grant applications. Mr. Gottschall, would you like to explain what we're doing there?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So those organizations seeking Dauphin County gaming grant funds within Lower Paxton Township have been asked to attend tonight's workshop meeting for the purpose of presenting to the board their grant applications. From there, the board will provide resolutions to the county supporting each application and ranking the projects based on their level of support for each one of those applications. With us tonight, as you can see on your agenda, are a number of those organizations that have given us advance notice of their applications, provided us with some of their packets of applications. And so I believe, as I see looking out, there are a number of those individuals here tonight. And so I believe, as in years past, Mr. Wolf kind of opened this section up and asked the members who would like to present to come on up, and we have some of their presentations loaded here on the screen, so the board can run through those.
Okay, why don't we, let's try to keep the presentations to hopefully no more than 4 or 5 minutes, because we have many of them. And we'll just go through the list as it's on the agenda and let everybody proceed in that order. So we'll start out with Heroes Grove, Brightbill Park improvements, playground renovation, phase 3. Vince, will you be speaking on behalf of Heroes Grove? I will. Thank you. Please come to the podium. Again, your name and address for everyone.
Good evening, Vince Pinizzato, 4530 Laurelwood Drive, Harrisburg, 17110. I believe we have this presentation up, and I will be brief. We've been here once or twice before.
Yep.
Heroes Grove is a facility located adjacent to the Friendship Center. It is a operating venue today. It serves as a venue for the music or the music venues, or the music come on.
Concerts?
Concerts.
Yes.
The music concerts that we have. It served as a wedding. It serves as a number of different things that are put on by the Parks and Recreation and others. It is also open to any member of Dauphin County who is interested in using the venue for whatever purpose
provided it's legal. The Phase 1 as is complete, as I said, and the Phase 2, we did secure monies for Phase 2. We are in the midst of preparing the specifications for that. We're looking at the earliest would be winter of 20 for initiation of the construction, putting a roof on it, and those other things that go along with Phase 2. Phase 3 is partially funded already, and that would put the restroom and that kind of thing at the facility. That, like I said, that's halfway funded, and we'll be searching for the other portion of that funding over the next several months. That's pretty much the gist of it. Is there any questions?
Board members?
Just a question to our solicitor. Steve, last year we had to sign some type of a document that indicated that 3 members of the board had no financial interest, and is that still valid, or do we need to sign that again?
No, the reason you signed that is because you were changing one of the agreements that provided the level of funding that that Heroes Grove was supposed to supply. So that's why, because you were going to make that change, that's why we had to do that. But this is not that.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
We might want to clarify why that happened. I think the 3 of you are on the board. It's a nonprofit.
Yes.
Just so people hearing that for the first time understand.
Yes, Rob and Norm and I all serve on the board of Heroes Grove, Inc., and it is a nonprofit. We are not financially remunerated in any way, shape, or form for it. It's a volunteer operation. But as Mr. Stein indicated, whenever we're expending township money, then we have certain steps we have to take, documents to file. But that's not at play here in simply doing a ranking for grants to another agency.
That's correct.
Okay. Very good.
Any other questions?
Okay. Thank you, Vince.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Lingelstown Fire Company. Please come over here, and for the public, your name and address.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Jeff Jumper, president of the Lingelstown Fire Company, number 1. I live at 5574 Banbridge Drive in Harrisburg, 17112. We're here tonight because you bought 3 fire trucks for the township. We figured we'd try to get in on the buy 3, get 1 free deal, but we found they did not do that. So we're here to look to purchase a support unit that serves Lingelstown and the surrounding communities. I'm here representing the fire company. We do have support from the rest of our fire company in the back, also support from the Colonial Park Fire Company here tonight and the Paxtonia Fire Company, showing how strongly we feel about this project. So to get started here, we do have a specialty unit that we operate. Am I clicking? I don't know if that works or not. Okay, cool. Someone else did it. Okay, so we do have a specialty unit. It's called Air 35. Basically, when you see firefighters walking around and they have those air packs on their back, they're breathing air, we have to have a way to fill that. And after incidents, sometimes we can come back and we can fill it in the stations. But when we're on an incident, a major incident, we have to be able to refill those cylinders because we only carry a certain amount of them. So this specialty unit does that for our firefighters. It's a regional specialty unit. It's owned by the Lingelstown Fire Company, but components are owned by the Lower Paxton Township Firefighters Relief Association. The components reached the end of life in 2020. We've done a lot to this unit, multiple refurbishments and life cycle extensions. We've replaced the compressor and generator. That's 1995, so that's coming up on 25 years old. We put it on a new chassis. The original box is in 1986. We've had repairs done to it over time. So basically, we're getting to the end of life here. We looked through the 2011 Dauphin County Comprehensive Review Plan for Fire and Emergency Services, and it recommended in Scenario A a replacement in 2010. So we're already at 9 years past that, and we did quite a bit. We really take pride in how well we maintain our apparatus. So we've been able to extend that by 9 years. NFPA standards, those are the standards they use to develop and build fire trucks. So when you go out and buy them, everyone's kind of on the same page and they're at a certain safety level. The standards recommend vehicle retirement when service life reaches age 25, which will be at the end of 2020. So we're pretty much there with this air unit. We've also had an internal discussion, do we want to continue to provide this service with the decline in volunteers and what we're able to do? The one good thing about this piece is it can get out the door with one person and we're still getting it out the door, and there's still a regional need for it. We'll talk about that. Next slide, please. So what we'd like to do is replace Air 35 with a similar, more modernized unit designed to last 20 plus years, ideally 20 to 25 years again here for us. It's still needed in both the township and the county. It's only one of 4 air units in the county. And with that, it responds first alarm. So when there is a structure fire, building fire somewhere in the county, 50% of the municipalities in Dauphin County request this unit, mainly because we're the farthest north. So we go 45, 50, 60 minutes away sometimes within the county with this unit. And recently we've been up to Halifax and some other spots that were about an hour away in the past couple of weeks. Responds second, third, or fourth alarm into the remaining 95%. I believe it's Pillow and one other municipality, or the only 2 municipalities were not listed on their box cards. So it's got a far reach, and that's why we felt that we can still provide this service. Lack of grant funding here. We looked at the cost of this. It actually, and you'll see it on the next slide in a moment, but it outpaced what we thought it was going to cost. The 2011 report said it would be about $350,000. That's quite a burden for an individual fire company and the Relief Association. But that grant funding will help offset this, if not cover the entire project. And we do plan on staffing and maintaining Air 35 kind of status quo with that. We'll make sure the thing gets out the door as long as we have it. So we're requesting grant support. We originally thought $350,000. We're at $480,000. We got a couple of quotes from apparatus vendors, and I'll talk about that in just a second here. But they all came in right around that $450,000 to $550,000 mark for something this similar, mainly because of the change in requirements, diesel engines, all that kind of stuff. All that kind of got jacked up here. So we did talk to our fire company and also Lower Paxton Township Firemen's Relief Association, and we've all agreed to put in a piece of the money toward the project to supplement the grant if needed. We'll look at those specific dollar amounts as we find out about the grant to see what we'd be able to do. The other thing here is all 3 township fire companies support the project along with the Relief Association. We did get support specifically from Grantville Fire Company, which is East Hanover Township, because it would go to the casino if there was a major event. We made sure we found out about that. And we petitioned all the Dauphin County fire departments. We heard back from 80% of them, and they signed yes. And some that didn't really wanted to support it, but they're also going for grants. So it's kind of one of those catch-22 because a lot of them actually do use our unit regularly. It's in line with the fire study, the Township Comprehensive Plan. We looked into that, and also the NFPA standards. And one of the things we want to look at, the reason we want to jump on it now on top of the fact that it's getting to end of life is with the contracts that are out through the township now for KME and Seagrave, we want to look with those companies to see if we can get piggybacked on some of those projects to bring us significant savings. Sometimes they do that. It's not necessarily buy 3, get 1 free, but occasionally they will take off a significant amount if it gets on the line at the same time. So we're going to look at this, and we're hoping to get the grant funding for that. Okay. That's all I have.
It's a lot of chicken barbecues.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
Yes. Any board questions?
I have just a general question. How successful was the golf outing?
Golf outing went great. We turned a good profit on it for our first year, and there's already plans to continue that next year with a couple of tweaks to make it better for the following year.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Takes a lot of golf outings to get to $480,000 too.
Yeah. It does. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. We'll now go to the Devon Manor Swim Club. Is there a representative from the Devon Manor Swim Club present? Okay. I don't see anybody. We'll see if somebody comes in before we get to the end of it. Central Dauphin School District, the NutriPacks Weekend Backpack Program.
Karen Withrow, 1311 Albany Road, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, 17112.
Linda Delago, 7771 Manatee Creek Drive, PA 17112. And Karen Withrow and I are representing the Central Dauphin NutriPack Advisory Board in our request for funding for the 2019-20 school year. We provide a direct food distribution backpack program, weekend backpack program for elementary school students in the Central Dauphin School District. They sign up and register for the program. We provide opportunity for every elementary student in the district to sign up for the program. And we purchase our food through the Central Penn Food Bank. It's delivered to our location at CD Middle School on Friday mornings with a team of volunteers to unpack the food and put it into the operations and logistics facility. We then pack the food and it's distributed the following Thursday and Friday. The parents come and pick the food up at the various locations throughout the district at various elementary schools. This year, we want to expand the program into the middle schools because we do know that there is a need for the middle school students as well. So we plan to help 1,050 students. That's what we've budgeted for, and we're hoping to secure some funding from the gaming grant to ensure we can expand this program.
Okay. Over 40% of the children who attend Central Dauphin schools are eligible for the free breakfast and lunch program at the schools. But during the holidays or on the weekends, a lot of these children don't have access to nutritious food. And sometimes it means going hungry. And we know, as I say, this program started in 2010. We started with 80 children, and this year we had about 850 students who were participating during the year. We have a wide variety of funding resources, from grants to public donations. But basically, we're trying to reduce hunger for those children who are food insecure. And when you come right down to it, probably the best school supply that we can give to kids is nutrition, so that they come to school on Mondays ready to be, engaged in their classrooms. A child who is hungry, it has long-lasting effects on their ability to learn, their interest in school. If you have a bellyache or a headache, the last thing you're going to care about is learning your alphabet or reading a story. So basically, our vision is to help these children who are sometimes going hungry on the weekends and provide them with nutritious food. We provide this. We just got a grant to buy a large refrigerator and freezer, so we'll be able to expand the types of food that we give. Generally, we give them things like cereal, something for a meal, juice, milk, eggs, fresh fruits, canned fruits, fresh vegetables. It depends on what they have available at the school district. But generally, as I said, our whole goal is to reduce hunger and make sure that kids do have the nutrition that they need over holidays and weekends.
I just had a question. How much are you asking for, the grant?
85,000.
85.
What was the amount?
85.
85,000.
80.
Yeah.
I have a question also, and I can't remember whether it was you or the other lady. You said you served approximately 850 students, elementary students this year. Do you have any estimate, knowing your growing need, and you're going to expand that into middle school age children next year, do you have any idea approximately how many children you may need to serve at our middle school level? I mean, I know it's probably a guess at this point.
We think about 200. And what we're going to start off, this is a pilot program this year.
Right.
And what we're starting off doing is offering the applications to the children who are enrolled, if they have, or to the parents of the children who are enrolled, if they have middle school students. And then if it works well, and there's logistics with it, we'll have to learn as we go, but then we'll expand it to all the middle schools, to all children next year.
Wow, that's a major undertaking going on to middle school.
Just to be clear, is this the school district applying, or it's the Panther Ram Foundation?
This is Panther Ram
Okay,
Foundation.
I thought so. Some of the documents, it's not too
Well,
sure.
NutriPax functions as a program of the Panther Ram Foundation, and it is the 501(c)(3).
I want people to be clear about that it's not the school
No,
district.
it's not. It has nothing to do with the
Because
school
they contribute
district.
to the school district.
The school district supports
A
us by
lot.
giving us a place to pack the food and to store it
Right.
from week to week.
So this is the nonprofit
This
foundation
is a
that's coming
nonprofit,
to
and
us.
this is only for weekend food when the children
Right.
don't have access to the
And
breakfast
I
and
know
lunch programs.
You folks built this pretty much from scratch, and takes a lot of volunteer work, and it's really come a long way, and it takes a lot of work. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. We have about a base of about 200 plus volunteers that help with this program.
Yeah.
That's great.
And I applaud the fact that you've already received one grant, and I know that you've received other private donations as well. And I think that's to your credit for the program that you do.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We'll now go to D&H Distributing's Project Centennial. Do we have a representative from D&H Distributing here? Okay, seeing none, we will now move to Coons Pool, request for facility repair and relocation of equipment. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is George Kunkel. I live at 6530 Parkway East, Harrisburg, PA 17112. And I'm currently president of the board of COS Memorial Park Swim Club, which is our proper name. We're asking for money for two projects. 2020, Coons Pool will be celebrating its 60th anniversary. We opened in 1960. It's hard to believe. The coping that is around our lap pool is deteriorated to the point where it's getting dangerous. And most projects like that are way beyond the capabilities of Coons Pool through our normal income to afford. I think we're asking for both projects a total of around $54,000. A lot of times we end the season with just enough money to hold us until we start getting memberships the following year. So that's why we go the route of the grants. So we also try to use all local vendors from Lower Paxton Township, which I think is an important aspect. So the coping is 250 lineal feet of concrete coping, and I have a local concrete man who gave us a good bid on doing it. The other project is to relocate the equipment that powers the baby pool. We had a problem 2 years ago, and we thought we fixed it, but it was only a temporary fix, and we need to do something a lot more permanent. Originally, we looked at having to dig a trench from the current equipment, 80-some feet, and 43 feet of it through concrete. And then when you patch it, of course, it looks horrible. So our local plumber suggested that we move the equipment to a different location so it's only 10 feet from the baby pool. And so that's the second grant, moving all the equipment and patching some concrete. It's interesting. Everything can go wrong at the pool, but if there's something wrong with the baby pool, that's the one thing we hear about the most. It's the baby pool. So we're very sensitive about that. Anybody have any questions?
Board members? No, I think we're very familiar with the pool. So you've done a good job of keeping us up to date over the last few months. So.
Well, this will be our fourth grant we're asking for, and Coons Pool's not the same pool it was 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. We're really working hard to try and bring it up to the quality of the rest of the park. As I've said before, Coons Park is a gem in this township, and we need to make the pool as good as the rest of the park. Thank you.
Thank you. Capital Area Soccer Association, Rangerfield Concession Stand Project.
Thank you. My name is Bill Thomas. I'm Vice President of the Capital Area Soccer Association. I'm at 2032 Laurel Glen Drive, Harrisburg 17110. In the audience is Rick Winter, who is our project manager for the concession stand project that we started earlier this spring. I did hand out an updated PowerPoint just with some updated pictures. A lot has happened over the last couple of weeks with regard to the current concession stand. CASA is a 501c3 nonprofit. We serve roughly 1,800 girls and boys ages 4 through 18 in rec and travel soccer program. In 2017, we requested $50,000 in gaming grant funding, and we received $35,000 to start our concession stand storage unit project. The new concession stand the construction began in May. We removed the temporary snack shed. We began excavation on the site. Currently, actually, as of today, the masonry work is all but complete. And the remainder of the project, we hope to be completed by the 1st of September. The cost have kind of exceeded our estimates. We're roughly about $100,000 in. We received some significant pro bono and at cost services, including architectural design and engineering, site planning, project management, which covers about 40% of the project costs. The $35,000 that we did receive 2 years ago has gone primarily to the masonry work that was required by the township for a permanent facility at Ranger Field. So we are, CAST's liability will be somewhere around $10,000 is what we're figuring. We're hoping to keep it around $10,000 of our own costs. We have about $15,000 to $20,000 that we're going to be providing in fundraising through a fall raffle that we do and a brick paver project. And the rest we're looking again for at cost for electrical and HVAC work, which we've had some commitments we believe for the electrical. The commitment from our players, their families, has been unbelievable, more than what I could have imagined to help us keep the cost of what CASA's liability would be. For this round, actually, here's some pictures, the renderings. Just wanted to keep you kind of updated. This was about a week and a half ago to 2 weeks. In your new packet, you'll see some of the updated photos of where we are. We're at height in the front, and I think we're all but complete with the masonry work. This has been kind of an ongoing commitment to both Ranger Field and Gorge Park. In 2017, like I said, we received $35,000, and prior to that, we updated 2 fields at Gorge Park with true grass to help with the safety of our travel players and our higher level competition players. This year, we're asking for $40,000 in additional gaming grants to help to continue efforts at Ranger Field. What we'd really like to do is, with this beautiful new building we have and this focal point of Ranger Field, we want to be able to provide some beautification and signage at the entrance to Ranger Field. Right now, as you come in through the parking lot, there is a fence that stops, one sign that's up, a couple of trees. There is a storage connex that will be removed once we have our storage unit, and we already moved the dumpsters that were there right at the entrance down to a better location. We'd really like to focus on a welcoming entrance and some landscaping, hardscaping around the concession stand, and some of the little things we want to complete that are tied to the concession stand as well to help us really bring Ranger Field to where we believe it can be from a community perspective. Here are just some aerial shots of what we're talking about. The top circle, we would love to do some walls and some beautification, land hardscaping. The 2 X's, the dumpsters and the connex, that'll be disappearing. We are working with Public Works for the walking path that's going to be coming, I believe, through where the connex is somewhere. We're going to tie it into the concession stand. So we're working with Terry, who's here, and we're working with Public Works on that project as well. With the new concession stand, we might need to relocate that top field because it's a little bit closer to with the brick paver project, the walking path. We might need to do some field relocation. And then again, around the new concession stand, we want to be able to do some landscaping, hardscaping, and really beautify that area so that it is a welcoming entrance to the park. Again, we're working with Lower Paxton on the walking paths. It's kind of a breakdown of where we think the funding would be, about a $60,000 project. We're also looking at signage at the entrance to Gorge Park. There's one sign there that's kind of a wood green sign. We'd like to maybe look at that area somewhere too to make it a little bit more prominent. We'd love for our relationship with Terry and with the township we'd like to promote that a little bit. And we have pride in Ranger Field very much. We believe in Ranger Field. It is our home for CASA. And we'd love to really make it something that stands out for the community. Any questions or anything?
Yeah, the current sign at the entrance to George Park is not very good. It's really difficult to read. If you go down Nye Road at any speed, which you shouldn't do, you really can't read what's on it. That might be something we'll have to take a look at.
In your packet, I have a street view shot of George Park entrance, and it is kind of a smaller green with yellow writing or white writing sign.
It doesn't stand out at all,
right,
to indicate what's there.
And selfishly, we would like some acknowledgement that CASA does participate in these fields, whether it's the home of CASA or whatever we can do, because when we have traveling teams coming in, a lot of the times they're not sure if they're they're just not sure. Is this where the games are? Where's your field? And we'd love to work with the township on what that could be, whether it's Welcome to Ranger Field or home of CASA, whatever it might be. We'd love to continue that relationship with some signage that does recognize CASA as a part of that, of what we've done for Ranger Field as well.
I think
maybe a whole new.
Well, the signage that's there now, it's a little bit subdued, but you do want it to be a certain. You don't want it to be too over the top. You want it to
but
be.
you should be able to read it, which you really can't read it.
I can see that, but the point I wanted to make is how anybody who goes by there is, I guess we'll see. Well, a lot of times, but especially when the fall league, rec league picks up, you'll see that whole place just wall to wall with kids and families and exercise, and it's a real asset. It really is.
And we the concession stand alone is going to be such a great opportunity for the township, for the park, but also for CASA. We've already had a countless number of families who are starting travel camps, just exuberated in some of the commitment that we've made as a club back into the club. They see that as a huge advancement for the club. And I think if we can beautify that entrance to Ranger Field, especially because it is kind of hidden behind the church, there's a sign that does kind of provide information about the park. But if we can provide just some beautification to that area, I think it just would do wonders for our families that participate in CASA and for the community as well.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that does lead us to the Friendship Center. Terry, are you the? Nope.
Jack.
Okay.
Good evening, Jack Doherty, 2407 Abbey Lane. I am the president of the Friendship Center Operating Board, and I'm here tonight to present our two projects. The first of which has to do with our gym floor. It's a sanding, relining, and total refinishing of the floor. For those not familiar with the Friendship Center, the floor is about 10,000 square feet, 2 full regulation-like basketball courts. It's used as a multi-purpose area as well. We have a very active pickleball league that's there. It's popular with a lot of our older adults. We have 5 courts going on there 5 days a week. It's a space that's used for our summer program, our after-school program. It's used for classes. There's a walking track that goes around it. It gets a lot of use. The normal lifespan for a gym like that is 10 years. And this has not been refinished since it's opened, so it's 20 years. Right. A lot of that has been touched up with light refinishing, but it's never been sanded down and refinished. And we have some of the pictures up here. We can see some of the lighter areas. It's actually going down to the original wood there. Mm-hmm. So, and you're going to see on the right there, or on the left, there's some lines that are painted. This would include relining the floor, and when we reline it, we'll be able to put the actual permanent pickleball court lines in there as opposed to the temporary taping that we have in there now. Just another picture there showing the surface. So the cost that we have on the proposal that we have, there's a cost of $34,592. In addition, we're proposing including the multi-purpose room, which also has a hardwood floor, which has never been fully refinished. The proposal that we have on that is $5,793. Our second project has to do with the liner for the leisure pool. For those not familiar with the liners, well, the Friendship Center is not immune to problems with pools as well. So we have a PVC flexible liner that replaced an original plaster liner that wore out after 5 years. We've had this for 15 years. Over the course of that lifespan, we've had a number of times that we've had to have the contractor come in and make repairs to seams, and that's been going on. So we're at the end of our 15-year warranty. If it is not replaced, we anticipate significant costs associated with trying to continue those repairs. The leisure pool is maybe our most popular feature at the Friendship Center. It's where we host learn to swim classes, which serve 350 participants. From ages 3 to adults, we have free classes, including aquasize, the aquatic arthritis class, aqua Zumba. We have the senior center members come in there 5 days a week doing aquasize. Not to mention, when it comes to rentals, it's our most popular feature. It was rented over 300 times last year, so it's a good revenue producer. It's used pretty heavily, along with the gym, in conjunction with some of the Parks and Rec features. So, for example, when they have the movie night, if the heat is too intense or if there's inclement weather, a lot of times we'll move those in. So we work in conjunction with Parks and Rec for both the floor, and then we have the dive-in movie nights at the leisure pool. So it's pretty heavily used. The proposal for that we received is $42,110. So altogether, according to my calculations, it was $82,495. However, these are going to have to be submitted. Requests for proposals are going to have to be submitted. There may be prevailing wage issues. So we are making a request for $120,000 just to be safe on that. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions? Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, item I, Lower Paxton Township Parks and Recreation. Now, Terry, the Coons Park, we have a bocce ball courts over there, and there is a roof project in the offing.
That's correct. The bocce pavilion-style roof, there are 2 bocce courts at Coons Park. This is a similar application as was done last year. But we're asking for a roof to cover the courts to protect them from rain and also provide lighting underneath the roof so they can extend play further into the season and a little further into the evenings when it gets darker. The one difference in this year's application is that we will also plan to address stormwater management issues in the park. That is a very wet end, the lower southeast side of the park. And an added benefit is that our Public Works Department can do this work. So this will provide some in-kind service toward the grant. The estimated total cost of the project is $113,000. We would be asking for approximately $70,000, with our in-kind contribution estimate to be about $48,000, which is about 45% of the cost. Public Works will also handle assembling the roof itself after the support beams have been installed. So they do that in addition to the drainage work. The township has had a great working relationship with the Rotary Club of Colonial Park. They spearheaded the project to initially revamp the courts, which were about 10 years old, and did a big rehab project on them and have been maintaining them faithfully for the past few years. They also coordinate leagues there at the courts, which grew from that very first fall, 6 teams. Now they have 16 teams this summer and expect that again in the fall. They've invested over $5,000 and continue to commit to maintain the courts. But the water has been an issue. They've even had to pump it off. And when it washes away the top dressing, that's a very expensive dressing that's placed on there. So they have a letter of support here, which I think is showing up there. Also, the Parks and Rec Board has supported the project. We feel it's a win-win project to add development and improvement to the park and be there for our residents. And the residents can use the courts, anytime leagues aren't in process. Any questions?
Terry, when they applied last year, did they receive any money at all?
No.
No, okay.
Terry, this is not necessarily a related question, but maybe you know the answer. It was mentioned about people coming into Gorge Park may not know where to go, particularly visitors. And I know we've had this discussion before about Heroes Grove.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a GPS address for Gorge Park or Heroes Grove or Coons Park?
They all have an address.
So we all have that.
Mm-hmm. And they're also found on our website,
Thank you.
township website.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
And Life Esteem, Holistic Health and Wellness Training Institute. Do we have anybody from Life Esteem? Okay, seeing none, I don't think I saw anybody come in, but anybody from the Devon Manor Swim Club or DNH? Okay. Okay, well, thank you all so much for your time and a lot of effort that have been put into these presentations this evening. With that, Mr. Gottschall, we now have to move to a ranking.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, in front of you, in front of each one of you, actually, you will find a sheet which will allow you to mark on them your desired level of support for each one of the projects. I ask that you take the time to either now or in the ensuing days to take the time to actually put some thought into ranking the projects, and then I will collect them ahead of next week's meeting, and then at that time you will have before you a series of resolutions supporting each one of the projects, as well as a resolution indicating the township's overall ranking of each one of the projects that we will send along with the letters of support that were already sent to the county, and that will be placed in each one of the projects' files with the county.
Okay, I would ask board members to perhaps do that and turn them into Brad before we leave the building this evening so that we can move this along. Okay, with that, any other board member questions or comments about this? Okay, seeing none, we will then move on to item 6 on our agenda. This is action on proposed ordinance 2019-05, and this is a LGUDA notice for the incurrence of Penvest debt, and this is for sewage improvements, and I see Mr. Smida at the podium.
Correct. Good evening. Mrs. Lindsay, board. Mr. Stein, you have before you ordinance number 1905, which is an ordinance authorizing the incurrence of a general obligation note in the principal amount of $13,278,195. This is a project. This is financing for a project for mini basins BC2A, BC, mini basin 5, and mini basin SC-2B. The financing is very lucrative. The interest rate for the first 5 years is at 1.512%, and then from years 6 through maturity, which is a 20-year maturity, it is at an interest rate of 2.063%. As we've done it in the past, the township incurs the debt. It is a general obligation of the township, but the debt will be subsidized through a subsidy agreement that will be entered into with the authority. In other words, there's a pledge of the sewer revenues to finance the debt. It allows the township to exclude that debt from its borrowing base certificate. It's an efficient way of financing at a lower cost. The collateral is about as sound as anyone in the Commonwealth can provide. We have agreed to a funding agreement with the Pennsylvania Investment Infrastructure Authority, which is Penvest. The ordinance, it authorizes the incurrence of this debt, which will be a general obligation. It sets forth the terms of the note, which I just described with you, and authorizes the township officials to move forward with it. This is done on a taxable basis, so there's a lot less necessity for me to explain to you what is required for arbitrage requirements, et cetera. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Mr. Chrisman.
No, I have no questions on this one.
It's about as level as you can get.
I appreciate your keeping it in lay terms as much as possible, Tom.
I can't make it any, well, you know, with this type of financing, the interest rate is fixed, so your debt service is always going to be very, very straightforward.
Right.
So we have leveled debt. This is good. Do we have any board member questions or comments for Mr. Smida? Any public questions or comments? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve ordinance 2019-05 authorizing, and rather than just say LUGUDA, it's Local Government Unit Debt Act. I think I have that correct, don't I?
You do.
Notice for the incurrence of the Penvest debt for the purposes of sewer improvements as proposed and recommended by Mr. Smida.
So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nobody opposed. There you go.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom.
But just so you know, we anticipate closing this probably in the latter part of October.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. We need to continue our discussion on crossing guard services, and I see our Public Safety Director, Mr. Koshiba, is here. I guess school's starting shortly, so good evening, Director.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. So an ongoing discussion about our crossing guard issues and the discussion that I had previously about a third party to manage the crossing guard post that we have here in Lower Paxton Township. One of the things that were brought up at a previous meeting is one of the members of the board had asked me to post in local media, print media, the anticipation of one full-time position and some alternate positions. We did do that and had zero response to any of those, which would solidify that it's difficult to staff these kind of positions. I do see that one of our crossing guards is here present in the room today, and that's good to see. But as I expressed in previous meetings in front of the board, I believe this is the best way to handle our crossing guard issues, especially since, and the number escapes me, but I know it was over 150 times in the last school year that we had to staff our crossing guard post with uniformed officers for various reasons for vacancies. Another thing that was the board had asked me, to refresh your memory, was to reach out to the partners or the folks that use this service. I had success in reaching our two closest partners, Elizabethtown Borough and Manheim Township. Both spoke very, very, very highly of the service that's being offered by this particular company. And in one particular case, I believe it was Elizabethtown Borough had one call off in 1 year. The alternates to this company were not able to fill, and they had to fill with a police officer. In Manheim Township, they had 3 instances of call-offs or issues within a year. One, a crossing guard was injured in a crash on the way to work. Another one, they were actually in the car and on the property, just couldn't be located at the time that the traffic started flowing, and there was a need to process the students across the roadways. And the other one was a legitimate call-off. So as you can see, just from those two circumstances, those two companies, areas, Manheim Township being a significant one, they've had very few issues as it relates to the management of those particular individuals. With that said, I'll just reiterate the current proposal that I had from the management party, the third party management. It would see an increase overall from the difference from what the township is spending now, as well as the school district. We would see a $7,200 increase in the cost to have a third-party management supervise the program, train the individuals, equip them, and provide the insurance for those individuals as well. And based on the information again that I have found in doing the research on this, as well as a recent article within the last couple months that I located from Benecon on insurance. There's a significant liability having the crossing guards as employees of the township as well. Some of that liability could virtually be taken away by a third-party entity controlling and managing your crossing guard services. So I'll reiterate that I think this is a good move for the township. It will free up our officers, especially on inclement days when there's other things that they need to be attending to. It is my understanding from speaking with the services that we contacted that they do plan on interviewing the current crossing guards, and if there's an interest by the current crossing guards, most likely there'll be an extended offer of employment for those as well. Any questions?
Yeah, Director, I just had a couple questions. So we're talking 3 posts, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And we had asked if you could get somebody from that company to come and so we could meet them. Did that not happen?
We went back and forth several times. There was actually a misstep on my part. They were going to be at one particular meeting, and it was canceled based on what was going on with the police department. And to be at this particular meeting, they expressed that this is a very busy time of the year for them. They had several other locations in the tri-state area that they were out, and they were unavailable tonight. So I did ask them to come. They were open to doing that, but indicated it would be at a later date than this month, and time is of the essence for us. Even if we agreed to, or if the board agreed to go ahead with this service, we would still be 4 to 6 weeks out from their interview process and them taking over the crossing guard.
I'm just disappointed that we would be hiring somebody that we didn't get to meet, that would be the representative from this area. And another question, I thought Swatara Township was using them.
I'm sorry, Swatara did. I spoke with Swatara multiple times. They've had, I think, one instance in the time period that they were utilizing them as well. But I previously spoke to them, so I reached out to the Manheim Township.
And Director, can you name the company again? This has been a while since.
Yes, it's All City Management Services, and they're out of California. They have a local regional manager that is, I believe she lives in Elizabethtown.
And then my next question is, if we put out to hire the alternates and for a position, I did see it in the Paxton Herald. Where else was it?
I believe that was the only print media, ma'am, that it went out to. I don't think it went
Because I don't remember seeing it on our Facebook page, and it might have been there and I missed it. Was it on the Facebook page?
I'd have to double check with Leanne to make sure that it was on the Facebook, but it was certainly on the website as well.
Okay. My question is, where do they come up with the employees if we ourselves could not find anybody in this area? Or how do they come up with them, I guess is what I should say.
I believe that's a very good question that I don't have the answer to.
That's why I wanted them here, to that they could answer those questions.
And I'm not sure what their marketing strategy is to get those individuals. I believe that the hourly rate that they're paying is a little bit more than what the hourly rate is for the township crossing guards at this point, but I'm not sure where they have their pool of folks come from.
Yeah, and I was just wondering, where do those pool of folks come from? Do they come from this area? Are they coming from Elizabethtown? Are they coming from Lancaster? I was just curious. Because I know ours is what, $12.50 that we pay, or
$12, man.
Okay, and I remember from before, are they paying $30?
Well, they're overall with the management fees, insurance, and those sort of related costs. Give me 1 second. I do have the actual $32.61 is their cost per crossing guard per hour. Now, that's not necessarily
I was
what
going
the
to
crossing
say,
guards
what do the
getting paid.
crossing guards get paid?
Their rate was 15 something an hour, I believe.
Is that the rate that's charged to us?
Well, no, I think the 32.
The rate, the rate of 32.
Move your mic over.
The rate of $32.61 an hour is what is charged to us in the
so
school
you're
district.
talking into the mic.
Oh, okay. I thought it was.
Again, when you talk that way, it's
I
not
thought I
going
was
into the mic,
talking
and I'm
into
not
it.
getting to hear the
Okay.
full conversation. Thanks.
I don't have the breakdown. I know it was approximately $15 an hour is what their breakdown was. The rest was administrative cost, insurance, and equipment, et cetera.
And that's the 15 is what they're charging us.
No.
No, they're actually charging
This, for the entire contract, of course, it's divided by 2 between the township and the school district.
Right.
They're charging $32.61 per person per hour.
So we're going from $12 that we pay to $32.61 per hour.
Yes, and so the township expense for that then would,
Be half of
under this contract, would be
$32.61.
$3,600 a year, would be an additional expense.
Okay, I thought you said 7,200.
That's total.
Oh,
Our-
total,
The
okay.
township responsibility is half of that. To
And-
be exact, it's $3,609.50.
And maybe I had this wrong. Were we looking to get rid of the crossing guard at Mountain View?
Yes, there was discussion about moving, based on the number of kids there, moving that individual down to, I believe it was Southside, to assist with the traffic there.
So we would still have 3 crossing
would
guards,
still
but
maintain
not,
that 3.
so 2 at Southside, and then not have 1 at Mountain View, and then the 1 in Lingelstown.
That's correct.
Okay.
That was the discussion I had early on with the company, and of course, they would have to assess that once they put their management folks on the ground.
Okay. I'm done, I'm sorry.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, Adam, I know you indicated that SWATERA is participating with this program. Again, and you may or may not know the answer to my question. Because the school district is made up of 7 municipalities, do you know what other municipalities, A, have crossing guards? I've lost complete control because I've been out of there forever. And as a result, I don't know how many crossing guards there are in each of the municipalities. And in as much as the school district has to work with each of the municipalities to provide the service, obviously, if I were sitting in a school district, I'd like the same service, so it's much easier to deal with. SWATERA, you mentioned, is the only one I've heard. Do you know, are any of the other municipalities who have crossing guards for the school district using this service?
I don't know the answer to that, sir.
Okay.
Adam, is it a yearly contract or multi-year contract?
It's a yearly contract.
And I guess, because it's always, you know, you have to pause when you end up paying a contractor for something we've done for years, but when you try to calculate the pros and cons and costs and benefits, it's also the cost of, I guess, having a police officer out there doing the job, and then whatever administrative costs there are on our part, the amount of time we have to spend trying to find people.
And I'm glad you bring that up, sir. I met with finance, and our actual cost, when you break down the other administrative costs associated with the hourly rate, is approximately $15 an hour when you factor in a few other numbers through finance. But you're exactly right. With the police officers, when they have to take the post, and it's usually on very inclement days, and those police officers, I believe their services are best served in answering the other calls for service or crashes and that. Though we understand the safety of the children is the utmost importance, so we do staff it, and we give it the attention that it needs. But by all means, we'd like to distribute those officers elsewhere.
Adam, who coordinates it with the school district, or who is their representative with each of the municipalities for the crossing guards? Do you know?
I spoke directly when we were beginning this process. I spoke directly with the superintendent.
Okay, but Carol's gone now, so it's Miller's the new, what was acting, has now been named official superintendent. Okay.
You said we had 150 call-offs.
150, actually, it's more, and 171 rings a bell, but I don't have access to that in my notes here. But so I'll say over 150 times we've had to fill. I'm not saying call-offs, for some reason or another, we've had to assist at that post. It could be a complete call-off. It could have been additional traffic control issues, any number of things.
So if the person is there, we still assist, and that could still happen.
I think that would be alleviated, especially with Southside, if we get that second person down there to help control the traffic to allow the buses in and out of the school. So hopefully that would diminish it as well.
Okay, any additional questions?
I'd just like to know if our current crossing guard has any input, both pro or con, pertaining to the proposed change that we're discussing.
Please come to the podium and give us your name and address.
My name is Bill Payne. I live at 1095 Grove Road in Lower Paxton Township, 17111. One of my questions is, if I start this year as a crossing guard, and this outfit from Elizabeth, the woman from Elizabethtown, hires different ones, I'm out of thing. I'd rather know now, and then I can go out and look for another job.
I agree.
You know, I don't, because my wife is half starving to death and everything. It's terrible. But anyway, just kidding there. But, and I'll tell you one thing. I don't know, I believe the chief here, but I tell you, I took off, I think 7 days, and the first 5 days of that week, I worked. Next 7 or 8, I took off because I had kidney stones. If any of you ever had kidney stones, you know what it's like. So anyway, and number 3 is I actually don't get $12 an hour. I figured it up. By the time I pay for my gas to go over there to do, park and that and come back, and what the government and whoever else takes, I make about $7.47 an hour. I know I'm known as a pretty mean man out there, supposedly. A lot of people shoot me the bird and that, but I'm only doing a good job for the children. That's what I care about. I care about the bus drivers, and I get there early, 15 minutes before I start. Usually I'm there 10 minutes after I'm supposed to get done, and I let the teachers in too. So just so you know. Anyway.
Thank you.
And I'm 80 years old.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Well, perhaps, Director, if we go in the direction of this company, we can ask them to expedite an interview so this gentleman can get an answer sooner rather than later. Thank you.
We can get Bill to recruit. You could be the recruiter for people. There you go.
Well, no doubt they'll get the job done. Any additional public comment or questions? Any additional board member? All right, then Brad will hold this over for our meeting next week then. Let's see, we have one more item for discussion, Shade Tree Commission. Mr. Godshall and Mr. Murphy, who's been very patient through the whole meeting. Mr. Murphy, if you could come to the podium and tell us if our shade trees are behaving themselves.
Mr. Chairman, just if I may, as said on the agenda, Mr. Murphy has requested, obviously, that the board consider discussion on the township shade tree ordinance and committee in general. Mrs. Zerby is also in attendance tonight to lend staff guidance on the issue and answer any questions as well. So with that, further ado, I'll yield over to Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Brad. Yes, board members, the Shade Tree Commission appreciates all the support you give us throughout the year. And this is kind of a unique opportunity for us to be here in front of you. In the 7 years that I've been on the board, I don't believe we've ever had a discussion with the full board. So we appreciate the opportunity. The specific reason we wanted to do this was because of some concerns in the existing shade tree ordinance regarding inspection of hazardous trees. And just to give you a little background on this, since I've been on the board and long before I was on the board, the commission has, on an annual basis, driven through the township. We do 20% of the township each year. So on a 5-year cycle, we revisit the entire township, looking for hazardous trees. And we would report those back to the staff liaison, who would then send out letters to the property owners where those hazardous trees existed, with basically a notice that they would be required to remove those trees. It was brought to our attention this year by our new staff liaison that there was some liability concerns about that, and I'm sure Amanda can expand upon that. But that's the crux of the matter. Should we or shouldn't we be doing these hazardous tree inspections? It seemed very clear to us in the wording of the ordinance that this is something we're supposed to do. And yet, if we're going to create a liability problem for the township or for ourselves, then I guess we need to rethink that. So we're looking for some input from you on that specific issue. And I know Mr. Stein has had the opportunity to look at this and dig into a little bit of case history on this as well. So with that, I can point to the specific sections of the ordinance that are in question. The Shade Tree Ordinance is Chapter 162, Section 162-4, under the powers and duties of the Commission. Part B of that section says that the duties of the Commission shall be as follows. Number 1, to study the problems and determine the needs of the township regarding shade trees on the public streets, including notification of property owners of any removals or maintenance needs as a result of an inspection of a shade tree. And then the other pertinent section is Section 16-14. And that section is entitled Hazardous Shade Trees, excuse me, Hazardous Shade Trees and Branches. And that one reads that where hazardous shade trees or dead branches overhang the right-of-way of a street or otherwise exist within the right-of-way, the Shade Tree Commission may require the abutting property owners to cause them to be removed at their expense so as to maintain public safety within the right-of-way. And it goes on from there. And another section which I'm not finding right now. I apologize for this.
No, it's okay. These ordinances can be somewhat lengthy.
Yes.
Who writes all
Yes.
this stuff?
Okay, I'm sorry, I found it. It was also within 16-4. Part 7 of that says that, this again is under the duties of the Commission, to perform a periodic inspection of the condition of the shade trees within the township right-of-way. So we've interpreted that to be that the periodic inspection being that annual drive-around that we do. And I think the combination of those three parts of the ordinance made it very clear to us that we were supposed to be doing this, and we thought we were doing the right thing. But with this, the introduction of the concern about liability, I guess it might be worth rethinking this.
Do you have any idea, Tim, as to how many trees are at issue? Because in addition to liability, if you're out identifying trees and the township deems them as dangerous or hazardous, and we have to remove them, although the property owner should do so, there could be considerable costs involved. So are we talking about 10 trees, 100 trees, 1,000 trees, or we don't know?
It varies from one year to the next, and it varies from one part of the township to the next. 2 or 3 years ago, when we were in an area that had a lot of ash trees, of course, we all know that the ash trees are all going the way of all things. We had quite a long list. There were dozens of trees in one development that were identified as being hazardous. Last year, I don't think we had anything. It was a very simple year. So there's a lot of variability.
So it varies from year to year.
It's never hundreds or thousands, but there can be dozens of trees in a given.
Okay.
Just to backtrack a little bit, yes, the responsibility is clearly stated in the ordinance that it's the property owner's responsibility to deal with that hazardous tree. But the township has the option of taking action if the homeowner doesn't. And then seeking reimbursement from the property owner.
I was going to ask Mr. Stein, if a tree is hazardous and the property owner does not remove it, and we do, can we bill them for it?
Perhaps it might be the removal of a nuisance.
Well, the first thing I'd like to
I'm
know.
not quite sure what that means.
That means not only could you bill them, but if they didn't pay, you could lien their property.
Oh. Okay.
I would like to know where how we should interpret the ordinance in regards to the points that Mr. Murphy brought up, our obligation to, what obligation the township has to conduct these assessments.
Well, it sounds to me like there is some support for the fact that they should periodically look at trees. That is trees that are situated within the right of way of the street. Doesn't say how often. It doesn't say how many times you should do it, or whether you should try to, or whether this is a thing where the property owner calls and says, "Hey, I have this tree that doesn't look so good. Could you come look at it?" Or if that's what it means, but it's kind of unclear. It could mean both.
What would happen if we recognize there's a hazard, the property owner doesn't agree with us? Who makes the determination who's right and who's not right?
Well, the Shade Tree Commission is the only group that's actually empowered with the ability to look at the tree and make a determination.
So Tim makes the decision.
Not me alone.
No.
Mr. Murphy,
I'm putting this on you, Mr. Murphy.
Well, the first part you read, the first section you read,
Yes.
it indicated an obligation for us to notify, but I didn't hear inspect. The first section that you read, that I heard it as there was a notification, there was a requirement to notify about a hazardous, but not that there was a notification, a requirement for us to go out and look at every tree and inspect it.
Well, I think
No,
you
it
did
does say, at the
yeah.
end of the sentence, it does say, as a result of an
periodical.
inspection.
As a result of
Yeah.
an inspection.
And then later in that same section is where it talks about the periodic inspections of the trees. And that's essentially what we're doing. Every 5 years, we're driving down any given street in the township to see what the condition of those shade trees are.
Do we, as we consider what you're talking about, do we need to consider it a public safety threat?
I mean, personally, that would be my interpretation of it. We're trying to avoid a hazard to the public in driving or walking under those trees.
Tim, do we get a lot of complaints from homeowners that call the township and want the Shade Tree Commission to come out because the tree's leaning, or, or is it just from you guys
Well,
driving around and seeing the trees?
Those are two different categories. And we do, in the course of a year, we do get several requests to do specific tree inspections by homeowners. And once in a while, it is a request from a neighbor. So if it's the homeowner themselves asking for our inspection, very often they recognize the tree is in decline, or I think what's even more typical is the tree has grown so much that it's lifted up the sidewalk. The sidewalk is the hazard, not the tree. So those are the easy ones. They know they want to take that tree out. They're looking for our permission to do it.
So-
The annual tree inspections where we're driving around, we're identifying things that people may not have thought twice about, and I guess that's the difference.
So obviously, this was discussed in one of your meetings.
Oh, two or three of
Okay,
our meetings.
Okay, and then the Shade Tree Commission sent you to us to ask us what we feel should be done then.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Okay.
Should we continue to do these
So
inspections?
you're the
or are we-
spokesperson for them
or are we,
asking us, okay.
Or are we exposing the township to some liability? And if I might suggest, maybe Amanda can explain this better. She's the one who became aware of the liability issue.
Yes, Amanda, could you come up since you sort of flagged the
while
issue
she's
for the
coming up here,
commission?
I failed to mention, there's 3 other of the commission members here tonight.
Could you please identify them for us?
Norm Lacasse,
Yes,
Carl Valley, and Ellie Flamini.
thank you. Hello, Amanda.
Good evening.
Pull the microphone a little closer. And could you share with us your concerns on this issue, please?
Not so much a concern. It was brought to my attention that in Harrisburg City, a shade tree in the township right-of-way fell and hit a car and they were sued. So that's what started the investigation as to whether this opens us up for a liability when we notify people through the inspections that they do once a year. If they don't take the tree down once we notify them, is there a liability on the township's part?
I guess that also raises the issue of how long do you give them?
Typically 30 days. Once
Typically
we
30
notify
days.
them, it's 30 days. But the difference from what Mr. Murphy is saying with when a neighbor calls and says, I have a question whether I can remove a tree or not, they know and have most likely set aside the money to remove that tree. When we send this letter out from an inspection that people don't know they're actually having, they don't have that money set aside. So
Right.
when we send that letter and then tell them they have 30 days to remove the tree, and they don't have the money to do that, then we have to file what's called a civil complaint to have them remove that. We have to go to court.
Oh, gee.
A judge has to find them guilty, in essence, and then from there, we have to move forward with removing the tree, and that would be at the township's cost. And Steve is right. Once we do that, we can put a lien on the house, but that's a whole nother process, and that can be 20, 25 years till you get that money back.
And attendant legal fees as you take each of those steps.
And it has to be 30 days. We don't have the authority to, if they're acting in good faith and that they need more time, that if they weren't just resisting, but like you said, we're talking, what's a ballpark figure? Tree removal is pretty expensive, right?
Yes.
It is.
Oh, it could be a
Depends
couple
on how big the
$1,000.
tree
So
is.
do we have the authority to give them an extension, or we don't?
We typically, as long as a neighbor is showing, as long as a resident is showing good faith and working towards an end result, we always give them an extension.
Okay.
Now, regarding the case that Amanda mentioned, my recollection was the news story, just that the suit had been filed, but I don't know, do we know the outcome of that lawsuit?
I think it's ongoing.
Okay.
I don't think there has been a conclusion yet.
Because that news story was a couple years old.
Okay, well, what I'm sensing here is that we need to take a closer look at the ordinance. Mr. Stein?
Sure.
And perhaps have additional discussion here after you've had a chance to look at it, and we can consult with the commission and Mrs. Zerby and try to see if what we're doing is opening us up to liability, and if it is, how we wish to handle that.
If I may also point this out, we usually do this inspection in September because it's kind of the tail end of the growing season before the trees start losing leaves. It's easier to tell which ones are in good health or not. With this in mind, should we proceed this September, or would you like us to wait?
We've been doing it this way although I always hate the words because we've always done it that way. Mr. Stein, do you think that in view of the fact a question has been raised, we should suspend it until we have a chance to review this?
Well, I can.
Just on a legal basis?
Yeah, I can give you a fairly thumbnail sketch of the liability issue. As you know, there's a Political Subdivision Tort Claims Act where we have immunity for many things, but we're subject to having that immunity pierced in about 6 different occasions. One of those happens to be hazardous trees within the right-of-way. You have to meet somebody that would file suit would have to meet certain elements. One, that actually has to be in the right-of-way and be under the care, custody, and control of the township. Another thing is the township has to have knowledge that the tree is hazardous and does nothing. So that's the tough part. Once we have knowledge of that the tree is hazardous, the township has to make sure that that tree comes down and doesn't fall on somebody. So that's the problem. If they can meet those elements, then we have liability. Obviously we have insurance for that liability, but that's where the liability issue comes into play, is once we have knowledge.
So even if we have knowledge and we act, and we try to get someone to take the tree down, and they don't, we'd be liable.
Yeah, you would have liability, but whoever would file the suit, they might sue everybody. They might sue the property owner as well as the township.
A question.
I think that was the case with the Harrisburg incident.
That's correct.
How many hazardous trees did we identify in last year's inspection in September of 2018?
I don't think there were any. We were in the Forest Hills area.
How many did we recognize as hazardous trees in 2017?
You said you had that bad year.
Don't
with the-
I'm going to guess because I'm going to keep going back 2016,
the years
2015.
kind of run together because it was the year we went to Rockford Heights.
Okay.
That's where all the ash trees were.
So I guess my
But
question.
my point is that
Years
since
ago.
at least 2016, 2015, we have not identified any hazardous trees.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
So Tim, are you just each September just picking an area and checking that area? You're not over the whole complete township?
That's right.
20%,
That's right.
right?
And what we use is the trash collection schedule. The township is broken up into 5 sectors for the trash collection schedule, and
So each year
we
you
use those
take-
same, we use the same maps and go through that sequence on a year-by-year basis.
So you're reviewing the trees every 5 years then?
Correct.
in a
We go
certain
through
area?
every neighborhood once every 5 years.
Okay.
And you're not making a recommendation tonight, you're seeking direction,
Correct.
especially with the timeline that you have.
Yeah, the timeline is the thing.
Okay. I'm sorry, one more. At what point this year does it become more or less pointless for you to go out and look at trees?
Well, as I said, we do it in September because it is the tail end of the growing season. I mean, we'd be pushing it to go as late as October because then, some of the trees are losing leaves. And some of it becomes weather dependent now. With the lack of rain just the last few days, we're starting to see leaves coming off some trees.
Yes.
So if you go beyond September, you're really stretching it.
Okay.
Well, board members, do you think, any thoughts on whether we should advise them to proceed as usual, or do you think there were none found last year? It's not that big of a problem?
It's currently in the ordinance, even though we may be discussing it further. I think they should continue to follow the practice that's in place.
Because you'll get out of sequence.
There's nothing that would stop them
You'll get out
from
of
doing their normal
You know.
September review for one of the 5 sections that they've done each year. You have whatever the section is identified for this year. It's currently written. There's nothing to change that. My recommendation is you continue doing what is expected to do your trip in September. But that's me. I'm only one.
If we come up with 2 or 3 hazardous trees, we'll just follow the procedure and deal with them.
Okay.
We really don't want hazardous trees out there because,
But we are going to wait for Mr. Stein's further review and maybe do something else.
what I'm hearing, unless I hear some contrary opinion from the board, is that you should proceed as you always have, keep doing what you've always done. In the meantime, we're going to review the ordinance and the situation.
Okay.
I think the ordinance needs to define periodic too.
Well,
That could be, that's pretty vague.
Granted, it is very vague.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess, someone could argue that that's dependent on circumstances as well, with something like the emerald ash borer causing all the problems that it is. There could be a case could be made for more frequent inspections because of that.
Well, when you have dramatic extenuating circumstances, then you might need to do like a township-wide review of all that particular variety of tree.
True.
Especially if you have a disease that's just impacting one particular tree type. But anyhow, in terms of the direction, proceed as normal for now, and we will review this.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you to the members of the Shade Tree Commission. The public should know this is an all-volunteer group, and they spend a lot of time and a lot of hours doing this on our behalf. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
That now takes us to improvement guarantees, et cetera, et cetera. And we have
Just one.
just one.
A reduction. Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve the improvement guarantee as recommended by staff.
So moved. Is there a second?
A second.
Second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any other board member comments, manager comments? Nobody has any more comments. The next meeting will be a business meeting. This will be held on Tuesday, August 20th, 2019 at 7 p.m. at this location. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we going back?